Hello, hello, hello. Welcome. We're back at it again, the Annotation Station, to discuss another fiction book club pick. But just as we have highs, like in November, we get lows, like this December, when we read I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Harpman. But we're here to absolutely destroy it. Sorry, I'm laughing because Damien came in clutch. Hated.
Yeah. Um,
We have a lot to say. We have a lot to say because, unfortunately, for the people who have loved this, we have like 5 million problems with it. Quite literally, it's a
sorry,
big
not sorry.
problem. I guess, yeah, yeah.
Oh,
But do we want to, Damien? Stop it! Stop. Uh,
enough.
should we start just with first, like a general summary of what this is about, which I can take the lead on. It's fine.
Go for it.
So in I Who Have Never Known Men, we follow this woman who has been raised in captivity in a kind of like bunker, like a prison cell, basically, with 39 other women. And throughout her teenagehood, she has not really had conversation with anyone except the women that she's living with, even though she's being surveilled by an assortment of men. Well, not only she, all the women there are being surveilled by these men. And they don't really know why they're being held captive, why there's exactly 40 of them, any of that. And so we just follow her as eventually she and all the women actually leave this captivity and try to figure out where are they, why are they, and what does this all mean. So yeah, short and sweet of it.
It
Hi
is.
Shannon. Please stay even if you didn't finish the book. You don't have to. You don't have to.
You don't have to finish the book.
I've not finished it. Free yourself. Be liberated. Because it's not necessary. Um,
Well, can I add a caveat before we get started with our roast?
yes.
One is, as always, if you're here and you're watching this later and you love this book, please, if you can't, if it's okay not to like watching negative reviews or reading negative reviews of things that you enjoy. You don't have to. You don't have to subject yourself to that. So,
But
feel
also feed the algorithm. Go ahead and be a hater towards me or Steph in the comments. I won't care. I won't care. The algorithm doesn't care if your comment is negative or positive. It just cares
true.
that you're making a comment.
True.
So it's fine. It's good to choose your own peace and leave. But if you choose chaos, I also welcome it. Okay.
Okay.
Um,
Yes.
so
And I also want to say that I do think it is possible, and obviously it's possible for people to like it because it does have quite a few good reviews. But I do see how people could enjoy this if you take it from a sense of it's about loneliness, or it's about what it could mean to be the last person of a society and to be, the last mantle of what was. If you think about it in a sense of maybe time passing, or even the fact, which we might get into at some point maybe, is that this has been interpreted as an allegory for the Holocaust. All valid reasons to enjoy this book. However,
we
I,
hated
we hated it. And I would say, at least for me, once you start examining this book with a feminist lens, it falls apart.
it. Correct.
So,
Damien, I see how people could enjoy this. Tell me you absolutely hated the book without telling me you absolutely hated the book. I mean, Damien, we're also very good book reviewers where we try to read things, and even if we hate it, we try to be like, okay, let me put the little hat on, my thinking cap on. of how can other people experience this book, and how is that different from the way I'm experiencing it.
Mm-hmm.
We're capable of doing that even if we completely detest a book.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's just it. But yes, Shannon, always lovely to have you, delighted to have you. Please stay. This is also the point I wanted to raise, and we will go into
Yes.
it. That it's
Right.
like, it is a book that's labeled under feminism, and I can see why it is. But if we look at it through a feminist lens, a contemporary feminist lens, it completely falls apart. But again, we will go into that later on.
Yes.
Let's start though with our star ratings, which should be clear, but we should just formalize it. So Steph, go ahead, you can start.
I say this with my full chest. This is on my top 10 worst books of the year. I am, and to get a top 10 worst books of the year in the last 2 weeks of 2025 felt like crazy work. I was like, what is the universe doing to me right now? To end, you know what? To end 2025 that way feels really fitting, but okay, if that's where we want it to go, that's where we're going. It is 1 star.
Yeah. It is the same for me. I gave it 1 star. For a while, actually, I'm gonna be completely honest. For a while, I wasn't thinking that I was gonna give it 1 star, because personally, I was actually captivated by the writing style. It was just she kept saying certain things that kept bugging me until eventually I could not look away. But initially, I was trying to look away. And so I was actually enjoying the way the story was being told, the language being used. I found it very engaging, captivating, all this stuff. So from that lens, I can also see how people can enjoy it. Um, but then the issues just started piling up, and then eventually I just had to be like, actually, I hate this book. And that can happen to me, frankly, a lot of the times. I'll read something, and then the more I think about it, the more I'm like, wait, did I hate this? I think I hated it. Okay, Damien. 2.75 stars. It was very interesting concept that suffered from a horrible execution. At least it was short. I can agree with this. I feel like the concept of this book is fascinating. It's great, actually. It's a great concept, but the execution was just not there. And for me, the execution is not even about us never getting answers about certain things. It's literally the execution of other like intellectual things going on in the book.
Yeah, I think that needs to be clarified, that this is the kind of book where you don't get answers to anything. And so inherently, if that's something that you need when you're reading and your reading experience, then this isn't for you, and that's fine. Personally, I don't need answers to the way that things always work in order to enjoy it, especially with this, which to me felt like a social thought experiment. And therefore, the execution is more important rather than the motivations as to what initiated this, or the greater why of why we're here. Just how are we here in this moment reflects that commentary, and that's the problem.
Yes, and I feel the same way. Like, as a reader, I'm usually not the type of person that I need answers to everything. Actually, with the book club that I'm sometimes in with Steph, I'm actually the kind of reader that's like, they go into the nitty-gritty of like, but this doesn't work. This and this, that's wrong. That doesn't make any freaking sense. And I'm like, I'm here for vibes. I don't care if scientifically it doesn't make sense. It says science fiction. I'm going fiction. Okay, I don't care. So that is not something, like, I didn't go into this book being like, okay, they're going to tell me exactly how all of this works, how it ended up, how they ended up here, how it all, that was never something I needed from the book. And I also never got it from the book. So if that's a big thing that bothers you, just move on. Frankly, move on. You'll be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, shoot, I just had a thought. It just left me. Never mind. You take over. It'll come back.
So the real question is, where do we want to begin with this review? Because I feel like we just need to be spoilery from the get-go. Like, there's really no point in a non-spoiler section unless there's something you really want and can say that's spoiler-free. Beyond that, we're gonna roast this to smithereens using all the knowledge we have of everything that happens.
Can we start with the title?
Yes. Yes, we may.
Because this title,
I went into this book, right? That it says clearly there, I've never known men.
Nunca.
I thought going in here that I wouldn't even see a human man. I thought we wouldn't even see one. Maybe mention them. Maybe. As I mentioned in my summary of the book, which is what I felt was important to mention it, literally the prison guards for these women are men. They just have a little rotation of men that come into their cell all the time to watch over them and exert control over them. So what is this never?
Right. You're interacting with them on the daily. You're not talking to them. You're not touching them. You don't know who they are, but you know that they're men and they're exerting power on you. That's an interaction.
And you also get the women who you live with, who also talk about their experiences with the men in their lives. So once again, I beg the question, what is this never?
It doesn't.
Never?
For a book that is supposed to be about never having known men, it is so hyper focused on the patriarchy. It actually made me sick.
Exactly. If anything, it should be called I Who Am Obsessed with Men. Because that's how it feels. And I'm going to go into what I think Damien is going into, which is, I think the known means she's never interacted with those men like actual human beings. They're just objects to her, like inanimate security cameras. And that's the interpretation I was trying to get into when I first started the book, but it's still grated on my nerves because it's one of those things where I'm like, I don't always take things literally, but when I do, it pisses me off that I was wrong to take it literally. Frankly, it pisses me off. So like, I can understand how conceptually the title of this most likely refers to this idea of like, I have never deeply known a man. And that doesn't have to be, even though it is conflated in the book, but that doesn't have to be in a sexual way, just in the intimate knowledge of knowing another person. The only people she has intimately and intellectually engaged with are women, not men.
And I will say on the comment about them being like basically inanimate security cameras, that's what I thought they were going to be. That's like where I gave them the benefit of the doubt in the beginning, where I was like, oh, okay, we could see them as so detached from the idea of what a man is that it doesn't matter that these men are in proximity because they don't see them as people. But that is unfortunately not the case, because it becomes very quickly apparent that our main character is fetishizing and having intimate fantasies about one of the young male guards. So she is projecting her sexual desires onto this person, therefore humanizing them in some form or fashion. Even if it's an objectification, it's still humanizing them. They are no longer just like an object. They are a person of desire. Completely breaks that within the first like 20 pages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Shannon mentioned I actually gave it, I assume you mean 2.75 stars. As I was intrigued in the beginning, but as you said, I needed to move on because I was looking for answers that I was not going to get correct. It's like, and I remember Shannon commenting in the Discord being like, I need answers. And I was like, immediately like, let that go.
So sorry.
You're not getting them. I'm so sorry. You're not getting them. So free yourself of those expectations, because they're not going to be met. Um, oh, you meant
Ooh.
1.75 stars. Okay, got
Yes.
it. Got it. Thanks for the correction. Um, yeah. So let's get into it actually. Let's get into what Damien says. It was literally about men. So I'm trying not to get pissed off
It's
immediately.
okay. It's okay. Reel it
Um, the problem with this book is that for a woman that grew up not, again, having any intimate connection, relationship, anything with a man, she and all the women around her are obsessed with them.
in.
They think about them all the time, talk about them all the time, and they measure their femininity against them all the time. Let me try to pull up some of the quotes that
Please
I
do.
started throwing in the Discord because I was so mad.
Yeah.
I wish I was making them up. Is
While
how
you
I feel.
while you look for that, I'll expand on that a little bit.
Hmm.
Um, is that I feel like being that our main character had never been in society in order to know what it's like to live amongst men in a way that is in commune with men. Um, this would have been a perfect experiment to explore what is the idea of a woman and that women can exist without being in proximity to men. That womanhood is not determined by the male gaze, by the male, relationship, that women can have their own sense of humanity and decide for themselves what makes them human and a woman and human. Um,
But however, this is what literally is said in the book instead.
mhm,
Instead of everything Steph just said that could have been done in this book, a literal quote is, "Men mean you are alive, child. What are we? Without a future, without children, the last links in a broken chain." And then, child, because we'll go into her not having a name, but not right now, responds, "So life gave such great pleasure."
mm,
So, literally, the notion of even just being alive and considering yourself a living, breathing human being is tied completely to needing men to exist.
mhm,
And this is part of my thing. Like, when I went into this book, I wasn't thinking that it was going to be the kind of feminist book, and I didn't need it to be, where it's like, we hate men, men are evil, we don't need men at all. I didn't need it to do
mhm,
any of those things. And I would have been fine, frankly, if it had just been like a genuine exploration of the grief of losing the life you had, because most of these women had husbands, partners that they spent their life with, they had children. And I can understand and respect grieving the incredible loss of knowing you had a life, a family, all these things, and that was just torn away from you. I can understand that. And if we had just gone through that in a genuine way, frankly, it would have been fantastic. But instead, what we have is a group of characters who then, because they lost this, completely center their lives on this idea of, we are no longer complete because we do not have men in our lives.
mhm. And that's frustrating. Especially when I remember reading that section, and still, I think at that point I was being hopeful because I understand that you cannot illustrate a problem, or you cannot fully critique a problem many times without illustrating the problem. And so, those words coming from an older woman to our main character who's never known men could have been used as a projection of biases that she held from society that she is intending to pass on to this person. But what comes after that is important because that could have been challenged. Our character could have even simply have just responded with a, but why? Why is that the case, right? Instead of that being challenged, it is actually accepted and ingrained into our main character because it cycles back at the end of the book as a justification as to why they themselves think that life must have value. And they quote back to that which you just read.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Damon mentioned, these women reminded me of the online men whose entire idea of masculinity is just not being a woman, which is ridiculous and so limiting, you
Yeah.
know?
Literally.
I keep internally, sorry, laughing at the specter of Lawrence walking by the door behind him.
I'm pretty sure he doesn't even know what's going on. He has his headphones on. I don't know what he's
funny. Anyway, I can just keep going with quotes because I have,
pull the receipts.
okay. So I have this next one that's quite lengthy. But again is about this idea of womanhood as it is tied to manhood and not basically not being able to exist without each other. Now I'm going to be looking for him, not paying attention to the live. It's happened several times. Sorry, it's on my mind. It's the specter of men symbolically in the video. Anyway, well, I'm gonna read this quote, and I'm just gonna hope YouTube doesn't get mad at me because I'm like, well, it's said in this book, okay? My genitals were cloaked in silence. Out of curiosity, sometimes when I went to the river to wash, I would seek out my genitals. I could barely insert the tip of my finger because the hymen that sealed it, because of the hymen that sealed it like a door closing off a corridor. I imagined it to be long and narrow, closed at each end, like the corridors in the bunkers. At the entrance, that barrier that only a man can break with his genitals. Further, the neck of the womb that only the baby about to be born can pass through on its way out of the great room inside.
Girl, I'm boiling. I'm boiling. There's so many things there. I remember talking about this in my Goodreads review. Listen.
Because why are we talking about female anatomy in such an incorrect way?
Literally.
Let's start there. And especially because I'm going to bring up this quote much later, but considering some certain things that are said later, it's like she shouldn't have these preconceived notions about her hymen, what can break it. Any of this should not be a concept up here. At all.
None.
At all. But somehow, this eventually woman, because again, she starts as more of a teenager in her own narrative, thinks of her own body in a way that's like, did we ever crack open a book? Which is only made worse by the fact that one of our primary side characters is a nurse.
Yes.
Only made worse by that fact that I'm like, we have a nurse as a vital character, like one of the characters that she really cares about. And yet we're talking about the hymen being broken and a chamber that's too closed.
No.
What are we talking about?
Listen,
if that were the case, your fucking gyno couldn't be able to go in there and look at what they need to look at.
Correct. Hello. Listen, we're about to stop. Well, let me low down on the anatomy. We're about to do a science lesson right now. Okay. First of all, literally, the hymen is something that is very fragile, and most people who are born with a hymen, it is broken in childhood, and not by anything that has to do with intercourse, but rather if you're right, you could be riding a horse and the vibration could do that. You could be shaken and that could happen. It is an extremely flimsy piece of skin, but also about a third of all the women in the world are born without one. So this notion of the hymen being something that is sacred and something that is steadfast and something that is very integral to sexuality is completely a fallacy. And that many times during intercourse, if a bleeding comes from that experience from the first time, or even later, it can happen. It is not usually always because of the hymen being broken, but just because of stretching and friction. And that's just natural.
Listen, Damien, we're multifaceted here, okay? We can do both. We can rant and give an anatomy class. That's why this book club is both nonfiction and fiction. United force.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. It is not a door that
It is not
closes
a
off.
door. It's actually perforated. So
So,
it can seep through.
you
It's
know,
fine.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Yes.
yeah. It is true that they never say she's a good nurse, but
Yes.
it's the concept of it. Again, this book is so conceptual that I'm like, well, I'm sorry, you're already bringing me to this space, so I'm going to challenge it.
Yeah.
If you had not brought me there, no.
Correct.
But literally, that breaking the hymen thing pissed me off so much. I literally put the book down for a couple days. I did it because, again, I was riveted. I had to keep going. I read this book in 2 days, like a mad woman. But was I pissed at multiple points during the book? Yeah. Yes, I was.
Speaking of periods, let's talk about her puberty. Because go ahead, Bestie. Take me somewhere. I will jump off what you say because I'm just angry.
Okay. Let's start it actually with a positive, because my first quote that I put in the chat was actually something that I genuinely found interesting that was mentioned, which was, the women told me I was lucky, that I wouldn't have the bother of bleeding and the precautions to be taken as not to stain the mattresses. I'd be spared the tedious monthly task of washing out the rags they had to jam between their legs as best they could by squeezing together their thigh muscles, since they had nothing to hold them in place. And I wouldn't have to suffer through stomach cramps like so many adolescent girls. But I didn't believe them. They nearly all menstruated. And how can you feel privileged not to have something that everyone else has? I felt that they were deceiving me. I feel like this is the best part of a feminist take and like an actual consideration of what life in these circumstances could have been. This was the best thing she included in here.
Yeah.
Because it is an interesting idea. She takes it to hell afterwards, but when it was first introduced, it's actually a very interesting thing to think about. Because even though again most of us are raised with a notion of like periods are a thing for people who have the anatomy for it, and they're not necessarily pleasant, because I don't feel like most people talk about it in a positive way. If I try to think of it as like, I have existed in this very limited space where I'm literally the only odd one out, it would feel weird. You would feel ostracized in a way, especially considering that it's something so natural that again all the women around you experience it, or they had experienced it, because some of the women are older, so they might not experience it anymore, which is part of what she's referencing there. Like most of them do. The ones who don't, the insinuation is they did, they no longer do, menopause. But it is an interesting thing to think about. Damien, as someone who had periods and kind of isn't experiencing any anymore, I'm so happy you gonna understand how lucky you got.
And see, this could have been a pathway to talk about the duality of relationships to women's experiences, or like this anatomy's experience with puberty, because like as being illustrated now, and we're talking about, there are people who do not want to have that experience because it has a negative association for their bodies, or is something different from the what they feel is genderly related to their identity. But there are also people like trans women who experience similar feelings to periods because of the estrogen that they're taking, and that actually reaffirms for them that they are closer to what they want to be. So there is nuance and duality to this conversation that we could have had in a book that was a thought experiment. Did we experiment? No.
No, because what instead we get is that because she never experienced a period, first of all, not only was she therefore considered as never having become a woman, she is considered a child, both internally for her own sense of being, but then externally, because, and again, put a pin on the notion of her being called child the entire time. We will bring this up again later. Point is, right? She grows up, literally reaches her point of death, and word for word, actually, that's the last thing she says in here. Um, it is strange that I am dying from a deceased womb. I, who have never had periods and who have never known men. It's this kind of ironic twist that I feel like it's not executed properly in the book, because I could actually see how it could have been done well. But the rest of the execution did not lead for that to be a satisfying conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, most of the book, femininity is tied to bearing children and rearing children. And that because there are no men, she will never have the opportunity to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why it's the big irony that at the end, what kills her is something that was never of any use to her. If it had been done properly, for me, it would have reaffirmed that her femininity was actually never in question in the first place.
Correct.
You know, that it doesn't matter whether she could reproduce or not. That's like a moot point. She has those organs, and those organs can become diseased and kill you.
Mm-hmm.
That's just life. Um, but because of how everything else was written in the book, that's not really what I got out of it. It's like it was just like a final fuck you, basically. And I was like,
Yeah, that was my interpretation of the way that the ending was written, and that was very unfortunate.
let's go into some of what Damien is talking about, because I do also want to talk about it.
Yes,
So
I had
I'm
issues.
wondering why all those women were cis, not just cis. Why are they all white? Because I'm
Yes.
sorry, with the way everything was described and explained and everything that happened, I'm sorry, all those women were white.
Mm-hmm.
Despite the fact that from jump, we're told that they came from different places, because the way they describe Earth as they know it is different from each other. They experienced different climates, different parts of nature, all this. And yet somehow every single one was white, because you know what's a very typical thing that white women authors do in their books? They don't tell you the skin color of anybody, because they assume you know they're white.
Mm-hmm. Because that is the default.
Okay?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
I
And
mean, real. Damien, real. But, you know.
and it's like,
to
okay,
advance.
here's and Damien has another comment, which is exactly what I want to get to about
This one?
yes, because so The main character being cis is not an issue for me. Them being straight and realizing that they have an innate attraction to the idea of men is not an issue for me. But what is an issue for me is that is something that is never again questioned or challenged, being that they find themselves in commune of strictly women, and that those women are forming unions with each other, that is then illustrated, as Damien is saying, to be less than men. And so the character never questions, can women actually find each other attractive? Can those things that I was hiding in my mind when I was exploring my body, is that a feeling that everyone has, or that only some people have? And does who it's about, does how much does that matter, right? But we are never given that chance. It's always just when she explores her body in relationship to the idea of men, it's in a positive. And then when the women do it with each other, it is always less than.
Yeah. I'm going to go into Damien saying, but I also want to bring up this point. I'm so mad because I kept trying to find the quote that made me go into this whole frustration about how sexuality is talked about and the relationship that the women have. I could not find it for the life of me, but I knew it was in there. I'm like, every single time the relationship between these women were addressed, because eventually they accept the fact that there are no more men, even though they did have those security guards watching them. They disappeared completely, so there are no more men left. They only have each other. None of those relationships are talked about as being as meaningful and deep and important as the relationships these women used to have with men. And I wish I had my quotes to back it up, but I promise you it's there. Okay. They have an attraction to the idea of men, or is it actually attraction to masculinity?
Correct.
Or just interest because men are the unknown to her, since she never got to form her own opinion about them?
Yep.
This was also another big thing that I think is tied to part of what you said. That it's like, sure, we can say she was attracted to men, but I feel like the whole thing was so clumsily discussed and set up in the book that it leaves you kind of like, I don't even know if she knows herself what she thinks about them, the attraction that she feels. I don't think she understands it herself. So yeah.
Complete missed opportunity that ended up just reaffirming heteronormativity. So
Yeah.
should we finally dig into the pin that you've been putting this whole time?
Yes.
Her name.
Yes.
Okay.
I was actually going to say, let's talk about that now. So our main character in this book never gets a name. Not once. Instead, throughout her entire life, she is referred to as child, which I would argue is one of the most unnatural things that happen in this book entirely. Because as far as we know, she starts living with these women from a very young age. And the natural instinct of anyone who meets another creature, because we literally do this with animals, is to give it a name. And you're telling me you have a room of 39 women and not a one of them is going to be like, that's Stacy. And we're just going to call her Stacy. Not a one out of the 39. Really?
It's so
To
stupid.
me, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. And frankly, I would argue goes against human nature. And especially when we're making the argument that like all these other women were formally socialized in society in a typical way. you know. So with that in mind, they should have given that girl a name a long time ago. But
And
this is also my other
yes,
point. She could have chosen a name for herself, which also could have been interesting. This is also my other thing, because I was also thinking about the trans experience and choosing a different name. Not all trans people choose to change their names, but many of them do. And so that could have also been significant, important to do for her to be like, you know what? I'm going to be, I don't know, Margaret, whatever. But instead, she is neither given a name by the women around her nor chooses one for herself. And to me, that brings down to like this notion of like, okay, because she did have another quote. I have another quote where she talks about how can I even consider myself human? And it's like, how could I consider myself a human being? I who have only known 39 people and all of them women. How can you even see yourself as a person if you do not choose a way to identify yourself? Which again, that which we can argue is a social construct that we all need to have a name. It's a pretty widely shared social construct. She has it because she knows the names of all the other women around her. She knows the names of all the other women around her. So we can't even make the argument that she was not raised with the construct of having names and therefore has no desire to have a name for herself.
It's also just, it's very, to me, the whole thing is very strange that she just accepts everything that the women tell her. Like, oh, we're calling you child because you never had a period. And the idea of identifying someone based on their puberty status or like level, or not, it's not even a level, because it's something, some people just don't have puberty the same way others do, and that doesn't make them any less of a person or an adult or a human. That's just, that in and of itself is a very weird construct societally. That's not something that we do. So why is that something that's brought into here from the previous world, but giving them a name isn't, is very strange.
So let's go into this other point that brings back to my notion that they're all white and clearly from the same side of the world, which is they're from all over the world. How did they communicate? What language did they use?
And this goes back,
or was it just a cage for English speaking women?
Yep. This goes back to what you were saying earlier about that this book is very clearly full of white women. Because as illustrated in the beginning of the book, when we're just talking about like cultural practices, right? There's a point where she has to use the bathroom. And so the topic of privacy is broached. And it does circle back later when she finally gets to use a bathroom that in which she's given some sense of privacy. But when she's in the cage being monitored, the women are not allowed to have any semblance of privacy. And so they're just using the bathroom in front of each other. And so to her, it was just seemed normal to carry on a conversation while you're using the bathroom. And then later on, she gets that privacy and she goes, oh, so this is what they really were talking about this whole time. This is great. But like, there are many cultures in the world in which the bathroom is a communal experience. Bathing is a communal experience. Toilets are public pits. And like, this is not unheard of to come across someone who's using the bathroom and you don't think twice, they're doing their business, right? So there were just many moments like that throughout the book that reinforced Western societal norms, in which it didn't line up with the fact that it was made explicitly clear that these women in the cage were supposed to be from different parts of the world, but they're all following white social constructs or Western social constructs. And that just didn't make any sense.
Yes. I will circle back to that because I will want to read the quote from the afterword, but I do want to add in these things from Damien. Yeah, identifying someone by what they don't have or can't do, it reeks of bullying. Like, why not name her based on her looks, personality, some weird habit she has? Yes, it all feels very bizarre. It feels very bizarre, and illogical. Listen, we welcome
Yep.
the haterade. We drank it too. Actually, we're full of it.
Yes,
Um,
and you're helping us drive
so
our
it's
point, so don't even worry about
yes.
it.
So let me pull up the quote from the afterward that pissed me off because it's going to be a jumping off point for several things.
Yeah, actually, the whole
Um,
afterword pissed me the hell off because in general, the afterward was saying this book is about XYZ, and we were both like, no, it's not.
no, I literally finished the afterword and I was like, "Did you read this book?"
Yeah.
Because I don't think you did. But here's the main point that aggravated the hell out of me. And she's talking about our main character, Child. She is an example of a person raised without culture, without societal constructs, without knowledge. She is a pure experiment asking, what does a person become when stripped to the core, raised in isolation?
Not true.
On every single point, this person is incorrect.
Mhm.
So let's start with the culture part, which you were already addressing. Everything that is referenced in this book is entirely Western culture. Not only is it represented by what the women teach her, the language she speaks, the books she ends up reading, it's embedded in all of it. So, literally, there is no way to say that she is a person raised without culture. And since culture is embedded with societal constructs, therefore, that other point is also incorrect because Western culture has its own societal constructs, including what you mentioned about bathrooms needing privacy for bathrooms, um, even the cultural expectations of what womanhood is. None of these women disagreed about
Mhm.
womanhood, how a woman should be, how a woman expresses herself. None, which means they share the same cultural background and understanding. On top of that, which you had mentioned, not right now, but you mentioned in our Discord, there's the fact that when the women start dying, the practices they use to bury the women are also Western
Mhm.
because it's tied to Christianity. Please go ahead and expand on that, and then we'll go further.
It just completely blew my mind that again, we're supposed to have women from various parts of the world, but they all agree that Christianity is the proper burial practice, or that Christian symbolism is an important marker for their existence within a space. And the way that that in and of itself again was a missed opportunity for another character to question, why is it that we need to carry over these practices? We are alone, we are the last people here, why don't we make our own practices with
Yes.
something new that is representative of us? Again, they just say, okay, we'll do this thing. Okay, yep, that's what a woman is. Okay, religion is important in this way. Okay, that a relationship is this. Like,
That's why I'm going to expand on this. Like, how did nobody disagree on what womanhood is? Even if we accept they're all from Western cultures, those cultures are different. Correct. Which is why I make the argument that not only are these women all white, they are all from the same cultural background, because otherwise the book doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
mhm.
Doesn't make sense why they speak the same language, why they have the same ideals, why they have the same expectations. None of it. None of it.
It doesn't make any sense.
Because this is true. Many Western cultures, and not just Western, are misogynistic in different ways, but somehow all these women were misogynistic in the same way.
Correct. Yes. Speaking of which, so I want to continue on the whole funeral practices because an integral part of the main character finding their sense of humanity is dealing with loss. And so the main character becomes the, in a way that's not going to flag YouTube, I'm trying to think of how to say this, becomes like the group person that they go to when they want assistance in ending their existence, because for whatever reason, either because their partner passed away or they're sick or mental health or whatever the case is, they have decided, I no longer want to be on this earthly plane. Again, this could not have even been Earth. It has been brought up many times that they could be on another planet. That is not answered, neither here nor there. That they ask the main character to take on an important societal, in their small 40-person society, but still a society nonetheless, role of being the person who holds the dagger and determines when their lives end with their consent, right? And the fact that our main character does not once look at these women who are making this very difficult choice for their peace of mind, the community's peace of mind, because it is mentioned that people who are sick are a burden on the group. And just like the amount of self-awareness and integrity and all that we can see on that very hard decision being made, both from the person who is being released from their suffering, but also on the main character, as that's a heavy burden to bear. We do not get any semblance of respect for that until the main character sees a man who passed sitting up in a sitting up position, and she goes, so that's what it's like to die with dignity. And I was like, girl, where did you get this idea from?
Yeah.
I was livid.
It's so frustrating.
I don't know.
It's so frustrating because it's like, within, again, Western culture, there is a notion of like, there is dignity in the work she was doing for her community, for her small society. There is dignity in that, but she literally does not identify it until she sees a man, in essence, do it better.
And she comes to this conclusion when she's alone, because everyone else has passed. This is like 40, 50 years later, when she is literally the last person alive. And she comes to this idea of dignity in passing on her own. Why? From where? And then it cycles back at the end when the book ends with, we know that she has eventually passed, that she wants to pass with dignity as that guy did. But she didn't know this man from diddly squat. I don't understand.
Plus, ultimately, it's also hilarious to be like, I want to die like dignity like he did. But it's like, but the way you're dying is the same way you gave dignity in passing to the other women you live with. Because you're just doing that to yourself.
Correct.
I just, yeah.
I was livid.
But you know what else made me livid? The last point of that afterward quote that I read, which is that she was raised without knowledge.
Not true.
Excuse me? This woman literally is taught language, spoken language, by the women around her, because she's able to perfectly communicate with them in speech and understand them as well. She can express herself and be understood, and she can hear other people and understand what they're saying. Second, then they literally teach her literacy. They teach her how to spell and how to read. They even teach her basic arithmetic. All these things are literally embedded in our concept of knowledge, of having knowledge, being raised with knowledge. And ultimately, in the bunker she ends up finding, which we'll need to talk a little bit more about it, but the bunker she ends up living her last days in, what does she do? Read a bunch of Western classic literature.
which
We're
is
talking King
culture.
Lear. We're talking
Don
um
Quixote. She reads Don
Don
Quixote.
Quixote. It's like these are literally fundamental texts that are considered societally as foundations of knowledge. So how are you going to have claim you read this book and yet somehow describe our main character as a woman without culture, societal constructs, or knowledge?
Mm-hmm.
She has all three. You know how she wouldn't have all three? If she had been raised in that cage alone.
Mm-hmm.
That's how. And even then, you could make the argument against knowledge and even some of the culture and societal things, because what is she seeing that she's supposed to dress as? What is she learning that she's supposed to do or eat or whatever in order to survive? All these things also count as knowledge, I fear. So I don't know what that woman was on when she wrote that afterward. I don't know what she was on, but she was wrong, is what she was.
Completely. And all of those things are not in isolation. They feed culture and knowledge and all these, they feed into each other. So she was not without. This was not such a clean experiment, I think, as it's being made out to be.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. And
Which is why I think I felt such dissonance when the main character kept talking about herself as being so different from the other women, when I was like, you literally share so many experiences with them. You're not that different from them. Not really. So I literally by the end was just like, you have this notion of being so completely outside of what they were, but I'm like, you were literally raised in the foundations of their knowledge, their understanding of the world, all this stuff. I'm like, actually, what's different about you is so small in comparison to what you have in common with these women. I don't know.
I just want to make one last point, because I know we're running out of time.
And more can still be said, frankly. That's the crazy part.
But I just want to say that eventually, when they kept exploring, after a long time, they found other cages with men. And that women were not the only ones being held captive. Men were also being held captive. So why does that not then beg the question, were all guards men, or were there women guards guarding the men?
We don't think about that at all. We don't even contemplate it for a second. The same way that she makes the assumption when she finds the bunker she ends up living the rest of her life in, which is how she ends up having different books and all this stuff. She goes into that bunker and she assumes that bunker belonged to a man, even though she also literally makes the effort to state that there is nothing in that bunker that could identify the person who lived there before. She literally makes the argument of like, oh, one of the things that's really hard is not having cloth to make new clothing. Like I have to go out and try to find more cloth elsewhere because there is no clothing in here, which is one of the key things that would let you know, in this construction of the world, whether it belonged to a man or a woman or whatever. But no, she simply assumes surely this bunker belonged to a man and never questions it once.
Frustrating all around.
Yeah.
I fear that I have blown a fuse from the brain cells I've been rubbing together for the past hour, because I'm just waiting.
We've just been so smart for the last 2 hours.
Gosh.
We can't help it, but now we're losing steam. But yeah. And like I said again, I could say more. I'm just gonna try to keep us at that 1 hour mark. But this book had so many problems.
I know.
So many problems. I really don't get actually deeply how people love it.
I get them wanting to take something away from it, again, in regards to like the idea of being lonely and alone. But to me, it is so ingrained from the beginning that this is an exploration of identity and womanhood and feminism, that to end the book and not have questioned those things, I fear. I fear.
I fear we lost the plot. Like you started with a good idea and then you took it nowhere.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. But anyway, I think that's all.
Anyway, thanks for joining us. We should mention what we're going to be reading in January as our fiction book club pick. We loved Evocation so much that we're going to be reading book 2 in that same series. We're going to be reading Ascension by S.T. Gibson, which hopefully will be as good as the first book because we both end up really enjoying it. So that's at least something to look forward to in this upcoming year. So we'll see you then.
Yeah, we'll start off the year with a bang.
Hopefully.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.